Hello viewers, this is an update video because I've got quite an exciting announcement to make, and basically it's that I'm working on my second book. So the first thing to reassure you about is that it's not going to be as thick as The Reluctant Apostate was. As you may know, I started writing the book toward the end of 2012, and then it was toward the end of last year that I thought, no, I've got to get it over the finish line. And I envisioned that I would be able to, work for maybe a month or 2 months and get the thing finished. It ended up being just over 3 months that it took to finish it. And again, only when the book was in print form did it become clear that this was just this monster of a book. The second book is not going to be like that. The second book is probably going to be, let's say, a quarter of the thickness of The Reluctant Apostate. It's not going to be an epic. And as for the subject of the book, I was originally considering writing a more general book on fundamentalist Christianity and creationism and basic arguments for dealing with that side of things. I wanted to write more about the Bible itself and approach the Bible from the point of view of how much of this book can we trust, how much of it can we regard as authentic, as historic, how much of it can we discard as most likely fictitious. And that's still a book that I want to write at some point, but I feel as though right now I want to do as much research as possible, basically, so that by the time I come to write the book, it's something I know, inside out, and I'm writing from what I know rather than purely, oh right, I need to research right. So that is a book I'm going to write at some point, but the book I've decided will be my second book is going to be a guidebook on basically how to leave Jehovah's Witnesses. Now, that may seem like, you may be thinking, why would you need such a book? You figure out that Jehovah's Witnesses aren't true, or that it's a harmful organisation and not worthy of your respect or allegiance, and you leave. Why do you need a guidebook to tell you how to leave? Well, probably if you've been through the process of leaving, like me, you'll know that it's not exactly that simple. That when you have a group like Jehovah's Witnesses that is so strongly geared towards keeping people captive, that it can be quite problematic to leave. It can be, in fact, a minefield to figure out your escape route, as it were. And there are things that you can do wrong. Just one example, which I will be touching on in the book, you can mistakenly assume that you owe elders an explanation for your doubts. You can think, oh, well, I know he's an elder, but he's Joe. I can have him round for a coffee. We can talk this through. And once he hears my explanation and he sees how sincere I am, he'll probably end up agreeing with me. And it sounds shocking that anyone could be that naive, but I was that naive once. I really did think that when it came to friends of mine who were elders who were approaching me because they knew I had doubts, I really did believe that it was simply a case of, well, maybe I need to explain this to them. Maybe they just haven't had anyone point this out to them before, and when I do it and they see how sincere I am, goodness knows, maybe they might wake up as well. And what happened was, when I was in that mindset, I went on a forum and posted about my predicament because I had elders who wanted to fly out and see me. It was just after I'd moved to Croatia, and there were actually 2 elder friends of mine who were both talking about jumping on a plane and coming to rescue me. And I let the forum know about what was going on and the fact that I was in these email exchanges, and they very wisely and very lovingly collectively said, whoa, hold on there a minute. You really need to back away, and back away quite sharpish, because this could end up ending quite ugly. The simple fact is that elders are not on your side, even if they're your friends, even if they're your family members. If they're an elder, you have to operate under the assumption that their loyalty is first and foremost to Watchtower. And that's something that I didn't know when I was in that headspace, when I was in those early days of waking up. And it's the sort of advice that I think is worthy of putting inside, say, a guidebook. And I actually made a video along these lines a few years ago now. It was called 10 Tips for Leaving Jehovah's Witnesses. And I'll put a link in the description. It's kind of, the book that I'm writing is more or less going to be based on that video, because I think the advice still holds true. But I'm obviously going to be expanding on it and, exploring some of those tips and kind of, explaining it all in a bit more detail. One thing I do want to be quite careful with is the aspect of psychology and counselling, because I don't want to give the impression at any point that I am an expert in that field. And obviously it doesn't have to be a book on psychology or mental health, and it won't be, but you can understand there's quite a significant overlap here, because when you're exiting a cult, it's an extremely emotional thing and an extremely vulnerable time in your life when you need mental health. And I'm obviously not a mental health professional, don't pretend to be one. And so that's the one area of my book in which I intend to tread very carefully. I will be having a chapter on seeking mental health, but rather than, pretending that I have the answers and, instructing people on that side of things, it's purely going to be about pointing people in the direction of counsellors and some basic advice gleaned from other sources on, what sort of, what that process looks like and what you can look out for when you're trying to find a counsellor, and how you would go about dealing with things if they didn't have much experience with cults, that kind of thing. But no, I can see there being plenty of scope for this book proving helpful to people. Another area in which it can be difficult when you leave Jehovah's Witnesses is in the area of building a team. As we all know, Jehovah's Witnesses is a very community-oriented religion, and you're all in it together, and you're part of the tribe, and you're going out defeating Satan's world with your courage and your solidarity with your brothers. And it can be difficult to replicate that sense of community when you leave Jehovah's Witnesses. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that as well. So basically, over the next couple of months, October and November, I'm going to be writing the book. I could probably, if I was writing as ferociously as I was when I finished The Reluctant Apostate, I could probably write the book in 1 month. But I want to write it over 2 months, because I want to basically be able to still run the channel and, my other commitments to JW Survey and the Truth About the Truth documentary and that kind of thing. So I want to be able to stay in the game, so I'm going to do it over 2 months, but I want you to know that, so that you're not worried about, well, why are there less videos? What's going on here? Why is it suddenly quieter? I want you to know, well, okay, it's because he's writing his book. As far as the channel's concerned, you may have noticed there's been more interview videos recently. That's a conscious, deliberate thing. I think it's useful to widen the discussion and have conversations. I don't think it's necessarily possible for me to run out of things to say when it comes to Jehovah's Witnesses, because there's so much to talk about. There's aspects of Jehovah's Witness beliefs and practices and culture that I've barely touched, to be honest. I've done very little, for example, on blood transfusions, which is something I want to discuss more in the future. but it's not that I feel like I've run out of things to talk about, but I do feel as though I've reached a stage where pretty much the most urgent things I would want to say have been said. And it's now a case of, let's bring other people into the discussion, let's have conversations, let's understand how things work in other cults, let's speak to people who have both left Jehovah's Witnesses and left other cultic movements. I think there's a lot to be learned from bringing other people into the conversation. So that's my logic behind having more interview videos, and also simply the fact that I've figured out finally how to record Skype interviews and do the editing and that side of things. So I'm genuinely enjoying moving in that direction, and I hope you guys are enjoying the interview videos. I will still be doing the rebuttal videos. I'm a little bit behind with the JW broadcasting because of the Don't Give Up series. I'm currently working on the final part of the Don't Give Up trilogy is currently being edited, and so that's one of the next videos that's going to go up. Then it's back to the JW broadcasting rebuttals, which I need to do. Next month in October, I hope to finally get the Warwick documentary released. I have again started work on it, but it's the sort of thing where I really need to dedicate maybe a week to doing it justice. And it takes me about a week, by the way, to do a JW broadcasting rebuttal. So it's no easy thing to, you know, devote the time and the energy to these videos, but it's made much easier by my patrons who really get behind the channel and help me to justify basically spending time away from Jessica and Deanna and, you know, treating it as my job, which it is. So it's because of my patrons that I'm able to do that, and I'm eternally grateful for it. But again, over October, November, just expect a slight decrease in the number of videos, and don't be alarmed. It's because I'm working on my book. And by the way, once the book's finished, I will hopefully be making it available for pre-order in a similar way that I made the Reluctant Apostate available. I'm going to figure out some kind of way of doing that again, but rather than it being a complete free-for-all, I'm going to make just a finite number of copies available for those who'd like advanced copies, signed copies. I might make some one or two copies, signed copies of the Reluctant Apostate available as well. But it's going to be a little bit more organised this time, because last time there was hundreds and hundreds of books, and it was quite stressful to get them all sent out from various parts of Europe, which is what ended up happening because of purely the way things fell in the end. But yes, there will be pre-ordered copies of the new book available, and I'll be going into detail as to how you can pre-order the book once I'm a bit further down the line. So once the end's in sight, and once I can see the time scale, I'll probably do like a book trailer like I did last time and give people details as to how you can pre-order the book. But all of that is to come. Anyway, that's about all I've got for you. I hope you found this update video interesting. I'll try to continue to keep you guys in the loop as to what's going on with my activism work and anything that you need to know about. But for now, that's pretty much it. Don't forget to subscribe to see more videos, and as always, thank you for watching.